When I wake up in the morning, I never eat food right away. I take the time to kind of get ready. If I take a shower, get dressed, I'll catch up with some emails or whatever it is. I change up the pattern, the habit that I grew up. Like all of our mommies told us to get up and hurry up and eat some breakfast so we can get on the school bus to get to school, right? And so we stuff ourselves with food. I never do that because our body doesn't do that. And I know that if I get up and I take a little bit of time to get ready, like about an hour ish is probably, that's what I did this morning. I did some other stuff for an hour before I sat and had anything to eat. That gives my fasted time, my low insulin time, my body, an extra hour to burn extra energy, to burn down extra body fat. It's part of my extension of my intermittent fasting that I do when I'm actually sleeping. All right. And so I get up and I do that. So, and what do I eat? Choices I made this morning. I had some coffee. I'm just sort of thinking through. I had a cup of coffee. I almost always have coffee in the morning. I know it's got chlorogenic acid. I don't put a lot of dairy in it. I mean, I like my coffee black, but sometimes I'll have a little dairy, but not very much, light. I had some berries. I ordered some berries this morning. I'm staying at a hotel. I looked at room service and what could I find? That was like my centerpiece for berries. They had some organic free range eggs. I wanted some protein and eggs. So I wanted to get some protein. So I had some eggs. I just had them scrambled very simply with a little bit of olive oil. I specified that. And they also had some sides. I had some tiny little mushrooms that were actually sauteed in the sides because I know it has dietary soluble fiber. And that's basically what I had for my breakfast. And again, I didn't have a lot. I didn't finish everything that was brought up to me. I don't belong to the Clean Plate Club. I quit that a long time ago. I don't like food waste, but I'm going to only eat enough to satisfy, but not feel full.
You felt satiated.
I felt good. And
You
by the
weren't
way,
doing it out of willpower. You were just like, okay, cool. I'm good. I'm
cool.
complete.
And by the way, I was also, when I eat, I actually stay in touch with my body. So I don't wolf food down. When you wolf food, that's when you tend to overeat. Because you're putting food, i.e., fuel, in your body faster than your body can process the loading, the filling up the tank to your brain. But when you eat slowly, like this morning I probably ate breakfast over 45 minutes. I mean, I wasn't sitting there methodically eating the breakfast. I was doing some other things as well, but I ate slow. So actually, before long, my body said, you're good. I don't feel like another bite of anything. So I didn't feel like, and by the way, that's an important thing. Quit the Clean Plate Club, because if you feel like you have to clean everything on your plate, like your mom and your teacher and the cafeteria lady told you, all right, who put that amount of food on your plate? Now, when I serve myself, I will actually be very conservative, not put too much on. All right. But when somebody else serves you, I always make sure I don't feel compelled to actually clean the plate out of a sense of duty. Now, it's true. Like we don't want to waste food. But so anyway, so that would be like my typical breakfast.
And can I ask one question about breakfast? Sometimes people hear the advice, and I've experimented a little bit with myself, that especially in the morning, now you had eggs in your case, starting off with, a healthy source of protein, whatever that might match your dietary, standards in your life. Protein is very satiating. And you don't feel hungry for a lot of other things, especially if people are at the beginning stages of maybe wanting to lose a decent amount of weight. Any thoughts about that? Do you feel like that can work for some people, that doesn't work? It's about
I think that it'll be different for every individual. But yeah, if you actually eat proteins and foods that actually provide more satiation, meaning that you just feel fuller longer, that'll help you not overeat. But the one caveat to that is that if you wait too long and then you get really, really hungry and then you are tempted to overeat again, so just delaying the time to eat actually doesn't prevent you from overeating.
Yeah, got it.
So I think that what you want to do is to stay in tune with your body. I mean, like a good example of something people might not think about, like the traditional English breakfast. It's meat heavy, blah, 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 maybe not so good for you, but it's got a tomato. Tomato is actually good for you. It's got lycopene in it. And sometimes it's got beans. And depending on how the beans are actually cooked, beans are a good source of protein. It's also a good source of dietary fiber and it's actually satiating. And I write about beans in my book, where actually, if you eat beans on a regular basis, you can actually shrink your waist circumference as well. And so, again, there's metabolic activation depending on what you eat, as long as you don't eat too much.
Yeah. Which goes back to the whole thing. If you are generally eating food, I don't know anybody personally who's eating a primary whole foods diet. And, which usually requires you to make food, unless if you're very well off and you have a chef making food for you. For the vast majority, including myself, is going to be you're making food that you struggle with. If you're on that, it's just a lot harder to overeat. Not that you can. You definitely can. You can overeat on any kind of approach, but it's really the ultra processed foods. And then even in the wellness category, you have, not all processed foods are bad, right? Almond milk is processed. This is, olives are processed. So it's not all processed foods are bad, but where I see it challenging for even people in the wellness community who sometimes write to me or I see them writing on social media and I'm reading comments, is people who are eating a lot of processed forms of, like, quote unquote healthy foods, like healthy Oreos. Oreos at the end of the day, they're still Oreos. And I guess you could still call those processed foods. Or you're eating a lot of chips in your diet. Or, yeah, sure, it's cassava, but you're having all these concentrated calories that would be a lot harder for you to have that much cassava if you were just eating it plain.
Yeah, well, here's a great example. I mean, 100%. But here's an example.
Please.
When you do ultra processed foods like chips, you can take wholesome, good ingredients, convert them into a form that doesn't exist in nature, and then reshape them and fry them or whatever it is. You've taken something that might be actually originally healthy and you've turned it into something that's not so healthy. Think about like purple corn chips, right? Or frankly, even corn chips. You can actually take something that inherently has some nutritional value that's good for you, and you can just convert it into something from healthy into something that's not so healthy. But you can also take healthy and minimally process it and turn it into something that is less healthy than the original form. This is back to the whole conversation about whole foods. So here's an example I read about in my book. Orange juice is good. People critique it for having a lot of added sugar, or had a lot of sugar, very sweet. And that's actually true. But that doesn't mean you should avoid oranges, because it turns out that oranges, like citrus, has a ton of dietary fiber. Think about peeling a mandarin or whatever. It's a ton of dietary fiber in there. It's got vitamin C, it's got hesperidin and arginine, all kinds of good, actually metabolism activating bioactives. And you would eat those. And that's what you call nutrient dense if you have an orange, for example. Now, orange juice, which in moderation, and if you have the pulp and everything and you make it yourself, can also be quite good. You're not going to be having all the same pulp. You're not going to be having all the bits because you leave a lot behind when you're squeezing the orange. But think about it. A tall glass of orange juice takes 8 oranges on average to actually make. All right, that's 8 oranges. And you can gulp that down. You can swig down a big tall glass of orange juice in seconds. But you would never sit down and eat 8 oranges, probably.
Right.
And that's the point. The whole food versus even minimally processing, like turning into a juice, can make all the difference between having that much extra fructose sugar, natural sugars, and even though it's nutrient dense. Now you've actually swigged it down long before that you would have even noticed that you actually pounded so much sugar into your body.
Well, I interrupted you and you were taking us through your day. So you talked about, coffee, some berries, a little bit of protein with the eggs, not always belonging to the clean plate club, watching your portions in there, not feeling like you have to eat the whole thing. So take us from there.
And I want to say one more thing about breakfast, because sometimes I will skip breakfast. Yeah. Sometimes I'll skip breakfast because I'm busy. Sometimes I'll skip breakfast because I don't feel like eating breakfast. And so I think this idea of breakfast being the most important meal of the day, actually, most people don't know this. That was a marketing message. Some agency came up with that, from the cereal companies, like I think in the 1960s or 70s. So that's a complete myth. And if you skip breakfast, all you're doing is you're giving your body a little bit more chance to metabolize extra fuel in your body. So sometimes when I do that, I won't feel like I've got to go snack on something crappy, right? I mean, that's the other thing. If you skip breakfast, now you're going to reach for some crappy snacks in the morning. Don't do it. So for me, I will then look for lunch, and I tend to eat lunch, a light lunch. I try not to eat a heavy lunch. The idea of eating a salad for lunch, I will sometimes do that. Sometimes I'll have a bowl of soup. Sometimes I'll have a stew. Of a little bowl of stew, something that's not too heavy, a small amount for lunch. I like to build my meals around vegetables whenever I can, and if it's cooked, I even like it better because I think it's tastier. So if I saw something like bok choy or sautéed spinach, I'll gravitate towards that. And I tend to look, if I'm at a restaurant, I'm looking at a menu for lunch, if I'm out traveling or working, uh, I'll actually look for something on the vegetable side to actually order as kind of like my quote main. And I try not to order too much other than that. Or maybe I'll get two little appetizers. Something that's tasty. I look for tasty things. I should say that's the most important thing. I look for the ingredients that I recognize. A beet salad with some pecans or something like that. Hey, you know what? That sounds pretty good. A little bit of vinegar, a little dressing with Banyule vinegar, apple cider vinegar. Oh, that looks pretty good too. I will recognize these things from the work that I've done, and that's what I really try to encourage people to do, is start to recognize the ingredients that are actually good for you and tasty at the same time. And I'll go for that. So I'll eat kind of a lighter lunch. The one thing that if I skip breakfast, I want to make sure that I actually don't overeat at lunch. And so I will almost deliberately make sure that I'm eating kind of a lighter lunch. I don't want to feel overloaded after lunch. I'm brain dead.
Feel sluggish, low
Sluggish, yeah.
energy.
Yeah. So that's the key, is not to overeat. And again, if I'm kind of navigating along the Mediterranean kind of genre, I probably will not order a big heavy pasta for lunch, but I might order, again, kind of like a couple of appetizery kind of things, or I'll make a salad. Another thing that's sometimes good for lunch, I'll sometimes look at leftovers from whatever I made for dinner.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll take a small amount of that. And because if I try to cook some healthy, tasty food, it'll be another treat for me that I'll look forward to eating the next day. So then moving on to dinner, I always build my dinners based on what the vegetable actually is. So, some people look for their protein. Am I going to have chicken, or I'm going to have whatever it is? And they kind of build, and the vegetables or condiments on the side. Even when I'm designing my own meal, I will try to say, what's fresh or local, or I can get my hands on, or on the menu, that I want to make kind of a centerpiece. And I'll look at how it's prepared and what are all the other ingredients I want to add to it or make it. And then I'll add things around that. And that's how again, I think you correctly pointed out, there's so much made. We're being hit over the head with the slogan of plant-based food, plant-based eating. But to me, I know that I'll be able to get really good dietary fiber and polyphenols if I actually choose that. Got to be tasty. I don't want to eat it if it's not that tasty. And then I'll start to build my meal around it. Same deal if I'm actually cooking, or whether I'm eating out, dining out at a restaurant. And if I'm invited to somebody's house, same deal. Like, if I will take a look at what's on the dinner table, and I will always go for kind of like the veggie stuff first. That's the first thing I put on my plate, not too much. And then I'm looking at through the Mediterranean lens, what is cooked in a particular direction that I find. I won't do this if I'm at somebody's house. I'll eat whatever they're making, but I'll always gravitate towards the healthy and tasty. That's what I'm looking for. And I don't take too much. I leave plenty of white space on my dinner plate to make sure I'm not eating too much. When it's all crowded together, it's a big mountain, like that. That's no good. That's the buffet style of eating. I will never do that. So always leave white space. You want to make sure there's enough white space. And the other thing I do is I never go for seconds. I try to savor the first, right? So like sometimes you get something really tasty on your plate, and like, man, you're going to eat that first, and they're like, oh, I can't wait to go get some more. What I try to do, like, eat slowly, take the things that you really know you're going to like, and savor them. And that's where you're taking your time. That's part of eating mindfully. Like, I think if you put enjoyment as part of it, as part of your eating pattern, and then you make sure that you're not taking too much, you're satisfied, but not you don't feel full. That allows you to leave the dinner party before it's over, kind of thing, meaning that you're not overeating that hara hachi bun mi, eat about 80% when you're full, and then like leave. Those are some of the basic principles of how I do it. And again, through the lens, I naturally gravitate to say, is there something Asian, or is there Mediterranean, or whatever's prepared for me, or what's in front of me. I'll try to cherry pick the things that I know that are healthy, and I don't eat too much.